Well, hello again, everybody. My name is Mike Sullivan with the Notre Dame Alumni Association, and we're so glad that you're here at Football Fridays. Our second guest today in our Catching Up With series is a member of the class of '78 and a former Irish captain. Please welcome Steve Orsini. Steve, thanks for being here today. We're so delighted that you could join us. Now, Steve, you're from Central PA, and a lot of great Notre Dame football players over the years have come from Pennsylvania, but you grew up kind of in the shadow of Penn State, and in fact, your dad and your brother played for the Nittany Lions, isn't that right?
Yeah, that's correct. My father was a leading rusher at Penn State back in the day when Joe Paterno was a graduate assistant football coach. So Joe and he were good friends, and whenever Joe recruited Central Pennsylvania, he would stay at our house. So we got a pretty good relationship, and I grew up wearing Penn State in the sandlot, playing football with my friends, and my brother, I'm the third of four boys, we were blessed with great parents and great genes. So all four of my brothers, or my three brothers and I, we all played Division I football. And so my oldest brother was a linebacker at Penn State his senior year when I was in high school being recruited. And Joe actually said afterwards, he goes, I took you for granted. And luckily, a Subway alumnus from Steelton, Pennsylvania, about 3 or 4 miles away, saw me play in high school and told Joe Yanto, you better check this guy out. And thank goodness, because we're from a small town. One of my friends, Jeff Still, is here from Hummelstown. Way to go, Hummelstown. 4,000 people in central Pennsylvania. I took my wife there, and she goes, you're Opie from Mayberry. And I said, and proud of it. Right, Jeff? Right. But anyway, back to the story. But, so I narrowed it down to cut this story short between Notre Dame and Penn State, Joe Paterno, and defending national champion Ara Parseghian. So I really felt blessed. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, we really can't make a mistake here. But I want you guys to know, Notre Dame family, that it was an easy decision for me. I took one visit out here. It was in a snowstorm. Brian Bullock had to come and get me in Chicago because the plane service stopped. And he drove through the snow. So most importantly, I came here because of the people. The people here are fantastic. The people make a place, but I also love the place. It's a great place. And then most of all, though, is the purpose that Notre Dame, and their mission and what they try to do. And it resonated with me, even as an 18-year-old from Mayberry. I really wanted to be a part of it. And boy, it's the most transformative experience I ever could have hoped for in life. You don't go to college and try to stay the same. You go to college to get better, right? Well, Notre Dame definitely accomplished that. With the help of my parents and with Notre Dame, I was well prepared to head down my career path. But it's great. It was great to be here.
Yeah, well, we're all glad that you made that decision. So you came in under Ara and then played 3 years for Coach Devine. Just tell us a little bit about the two men, their different approaches, different personalities.
Yeah, they were definitely different as far as approaching their jobs. Both very successful, both national champion coaches. So we just felt honored to be able to play. And really, it was a great experience. I must admit, we were all surprised that Coach Parseghian retired after our freshman year. I definitely came here. One of the main reasons, in addition to everything I just said about Notre Dame as a school, but Coach Parseghian and the success. They were defending national champs. We wanted to do the same thing under Coach Parseghian, and we didn't get that opportunity. But I got to praise Coach Devine. It was tough following a legend. And he did, and he produced a national championship team. But they were different. Speaking of the differences, Coach Parseghian and his staff, they were together for a long time, and they literally knew each other so well. And in practice, Coach Parseghian would literally run the offense go on one field, and he'd be in the tower, and then turn around and say, okay, defense, now you go. And they were practicing against the scout teams. So he watched every play, every practice, and he knew every play, and to the point where he'd yell, "Orsini, you stepped wrong, run it again." I mean, what? He's up in the tower. Yeah, I'm just a little old fullback, but that was Coach Parsegan. Now, Coach Devine was just the opposite, and he'll be the first to admit he didn't know our plays, but he hired really good assistant coaches. Now, Coach Parsegan hired good assistants too, but Coach Parsegan was the man in charge of everything. Coach Devine delegated it out, and I learned that to be a leader going forward. There's more than one way to be a leader, and you can do both of them are successful, but I admired Coach Devine as a leader now myself to be able to delegate, especially the responsibilities of being a head coach football at Notre Dame, to the assistant coaches who were fantastic. And together, that coaching staff, we were very lucky to have, and obviously the last game I played, we won the national championship. So our goals were accomplished, even though it was with a different coach.
So Coach Devine kept on great guys like George Kelly, Joe Yanto. How important was that from a continuity standpoint?
Yeah, it was very important, especially on the defensive side. The defensive were great, and not that the offense wasn't in the past, but it was very important that we had that mixture, and that's why I was referring to the players. We really relied on the assistant coaches way more than we did under Coach Parsegan, and it wasn't about the ability of the assistant coaching staffs. It was just the method of the head coach, and so it was good to have a mixture of new Coach Devine people as well as era Parsegan people like Coach Yanto and Coach Kelly. Coach Yanto's the one that recruited me, and it made me feel good during the transition. I didn't dress my freshman year. They were defending national champs. I was 8th string fullback. So I knew I had a lot of work to do in the offseason, and luckily I did. But with a new coach and not playing the year before, I was a little concerned. But once we got together in spring and got to meet the new coaches and how they worked so well together so quickly, the old staff and the new staff, it really helped the team grow. But I must admit, the difference in the two coaches, the classes that were seniors, rising seniors when the change occurred, that was a tough transition for them. 3 years, they were national champs in '73. And if you recall, we were, I think, 8-3 our sophomore year, Devine's first year, and that was still when they let the players vote if you wanted to go to a bowl. And I think we put an end to that because the team voted not to go. We were invited to go to, I can't remember which bowl it was, but we actually turned down a bowl invitation because we didn't think 8-3 was good enough. So
that's amazing. Says a lot about the culture that Era had built.
Exactly, and why we came. That's what we came for, to be a part of that, to be a part of that legacy.
Absolutely. So by your senior year now, heading into '77, all that hard work paid off. You're not 8th string anymore, and you're voted as one of the 4 captains on a team that ultimately won the national championship. But you, Ross Browner, Willie Fry, Terry Urick, 4 captains. What was that experience like, being a captain of a Notre Dame football team?
It's beyond a dream. It's hard to describe. And most importantly, it was voted on by my teammates. That meant the most to me. And, for the record, I never started a game at Notre Dame. But I embraced my role, was very positive as a leader, really had a great camaraderie, and I was really honored to be voted by my teammates to be a captain on that team. We thought we had a special team. We were ranked really high to begin with. We slipped early, losing to Ole Miss down in Jackson, Mississippi, but luckily we rebounded. But it was a real honor, and that honor is still paying huge dividends throughout my whole life. It's as most of you know in the Notre Dame family, when you're out around the country and people ask, so where'd you go to school? When someone says Notre Dame, that stops the conversation, and I'm proud of that, and you guys all should be proud of that. It's a special place.
Absolutely. So the '77 team was a special team, and I think most people, when we think of that '77 championship team, you're going to think of the iconic green jersey game against Southern Cal in that year. So as a captain, you were clued in to what was going to happen that week with Coach Devine, weren't you?
Yes, yeah. After Tuesday's practice, I think it was, leading into the Southern Cal game on Saturday, Coach Devine called the 4 captains in and said, I have something I'd like to show you. And so we came in, and you can imagine after practice, we're like, let's get the dinner, let's get our meetings done, because we got to go study. You know, we're a little impatient, to be honest with you. And Coach Devine pulls out these green jerseys and said, what do you think? And I said, wow, you know, we all said that they're pretty neat. You know, maybe next year that'd be really good, you know, to have the team wear. That'd be fun. And he says, no, I want to wear them on Saturday. And he goes, what do you think? And we said, absolutely. You know, we were getting pumped up. Now he said, no, whoa. You can't tell anyone. You can't tell your roommate. My roommate was a middle linebacker. You know, you can't tell your parents. You can't tell your friends. You can't tell anyone. It's got to be a surprise. And he talked about the Trojan horse plan that, I don't know if it was the band or someone. I'm not sure who organized the Trojan horse, but it was quite a motivational ploy that really worked. So we were quiet. No, somehow the secret was kept. And even Coach...
No, come on. 45 years later, who'd you tell? You could tell us now.
No, I didn't tell anyone. I wasn't going to be the guy. Now, I thought one of the other ones would, but I don't think they did. And then when Coach Devine in the pep rally and Digger Phelps got up and spoke, and as you know, Digger, they were Final Four team the same year, our senior year, so it was one heck of a year in Notre Dame sports. So Digger spoke, Dan spoke and said, everybody wear green, you know, wear green. Even Willie Fry got up and, you know, Big Willie, you know, Willie didn't talk much, but he said, everyone please wear green on Saturday, and that's all he said. And so then we go off, and it was really fun because, so we come and we dress for warm-ups, and with the blue jerseys in our locker. But a lot of guys, when they tape their ankle, they actually tape them over their shoes and their socks. And at least back then they did. And they gave socks that had green stripes on it. And most of the guys, you know, they're superstitious. And they said, well, no, I got to have my blue socks, you know. And Coach Devine called the captains together and said, get out there and tell these guys to forget about what color their sock is. You know why. And just get them out there and get them focused on getting ready to play. So we did. But when we came back in, every locker had a green jersey hanging in it, and it looked like we just won the national championship. In fact, so then Coach Devine calls the captains and again, calm everyone down, you know, because we got to go play the game now. And Southern Cal was like ranked, I don't know, they were ranked higher than we were. I think like
fifth, I think. Yeah.
Was it fifth? It was ahead of us. We were the underdogs, and it worked because we won 49-19.
Yeah, what a great moment that was, and it's just one of those iconic games in Notre Dame Stadium. But the year had a lot of highlights and memories. And, of course, the team went on to beat Texas, number 1 ranked Texas, in the Cotton Bowl, 38-10, went on to win the national championship. So just walk us through that ride. As you mentioned earlier, you know, a setback earlier in the year, but share some memories about that ride to the national championship.
Yeah, so we realized our potential early on. I mean, and it was our goal. When we were freshmen, our group got together and said, let's, you know, Val, we're going to win a national championship before we leave. And that was the culture that Era had created and delivered on with 2 national championships. So who were we to question that? We wanted to be part of that legacy. So we promised ourselves that. And then we slipped up down in Jackson. It was very hot, you know, and our big guys had a tough time. We all did. I'm not blaming anyone, but we lost that game. And then we had a players-only meeting. The captain said, coaches, please give us about 30 minutes. And we just had a heart-to-heart with our players, our teammates. And we said, we know we can do better than this. Let's dedicate our lives to coming around, and we can still reach our goal of being national champs. And that was a stretch, I must admit, but I'm really proud of the teammates and how they rallied through it. That SC game really was a turning point, but the number 1 turning point, now that history is always 2020, sadly, sadly, Joe Montana was our quarterback at the end of the year, but he wasn't our quarterback in the beginning of the year, or not our starting quarterback. He was third string. Imagine that. So a guy named Rusty Lish was the quarterback, first string, and a guy named Gary Forstek was the second team. So we lost to Ole Miss, still playing with Rusty Lish, Gary Forstek, and Joe Montana as our quarterbacks. We go down to Purdue, and we're losing. And Coach Devine pulls Rusty Lish and puts in Gary Forstek, the number 2 quarterback. He was doing okay, moving the team, and then he got hit really hard. It was a blindside hit, and he got knocked out. So he was out. So I don't know exactly the conversation because I was out in the field at the time, but I can only imagine Coach Devine turned around and said, well, okay, Montana, get in there. I'm kind of teasing because he had many comebacks prior to that, so we all knew what he could do. And he came in, and we had another comeback, won the game, and then nothing was stopping us. That Southern Cal game really emphasized that. But it really gave us the confidence to then go down to Dallas in the backyard of the University of Texas, the only undefeated team in the nation. Earl Campbell was a Heisman Trophy winner. Brad Shearer was the Outland Trophy winner, which is the best lineman in the country. No one gave us a chance, right? We went to Dallas, and everybody was laughing at us. What are you doing here? You're wasting your time. You're going to get run over. So needless to say, the omen was it snowed in Dallas the night before the game. And so we were at a seminary, actually, at the University of Dallas, and we just thought it was great. So we were already jacked up. And then we go down to the game, and we beat them 38-10, and it wasn't even that close, Mike. So it was really gratifying. But I must admit, ironically, we were, I think, 5th or 6th going against the number 1 team. So obviously the number 2 team would have moved up back then because we didn't have the playoffs, and that was Oklahoma. And they were playing a team from Arkansas led by Lou Holtz, right? And they had no chance, according to the odds makers, either. So Lou Holt takes his team down after we played in the afternoon. We won. So then we're cheering for Arkansas to beat Oklahoma. And then we hear Coach Holtz benches his 2 starting running backs. I believe it's the 2 starting running backs because of some disciplinary action. And we're like, oh, no. Now they really don't have a chance. We're not going to be able to capitalize on the great win we had. But they pulled off an upset and beat Oklahoma. So, being a national champ, a little bit is being lucky.
Well, I think that means Lou really does have 2 national championships.
There you go. Well, he can have one of our rings, that's for sure, because he helped us a lot.
So let's look at a little bit of a comparison between the 77 team, your team, and this year's Fighting Irish team. There's some similarities there in the sense that, early season loss, playing multiple quarterbacks, and trying to right the ship here. Obviously, the playoff situation's a little different than the bowl alignment back then. But I'm curious, what similarities or differences do you see between the 2 teams?
Yeah, no, actually, I'm thinking about that a lot as I watch the games this year. The similarities are just what you mentioned. The differences are, Cincinnati is a very good team. I think Ole Miss was maybe 500. I mean, it was just a fluke game that we lost. The other thing that I like to see is we prided ourselves in getting better every week in 77 because we knew we had to. We knew if we want to be national champs, we're going to have to go up against the best. So we knew we had to get better every week. And I see that in this year's team as well. I thought it was really important for us to win big against in those big games. I haven't seen that yet. But you know what? I think we will see it before the end. Now, we don't have, like, the Southern Cals left in our schedule, ranked, top 5 in the country. But still, every game's a challenge. Every game's the biggest game for the opponent when they come here. And I'm very confident. I think they'll win out. I don't know where that'll put them, especially in today. The biggest difference is there is a playoff. Well, I call it an invitational. It's not a playoff. Because there are teams like maybe Cincinnati after the poll I just saw that could win it all and not even get a chance. Well, that's not a playoff, right? A playoff is you play it on the field. And so anyway, I'll get off my college athletic podium.
Well, we'll come back to getting some thoughts about the state of college athletics here in just a moment. I do want to ask you one more question about 77 versus this year's team. You guys had a pretty outstanding tight end in three-time All-American Ken McAfee, and of course Michael Mayer for this year's team. Any thoughts on the style of play between those two tight ends?
They're both unstoppable, and I mean, we knew it, and I get the feeling this team knows it as well. That if you know, I was a blocking back really. I knew when we needed 3rd and 4, I knew exactly what we were going to do, and the other team knew exactly what we were going to do. But we were so confident in McAfee and Montana's skills that it really made us play better because we knew if we did our job, they were going to do their job, and the rest is history. And I think that's what I see out in the field with Mayer. I think he's unstoppable. Ken McAfee was unstoppable, and if everyone else is doing their job, and I think that's getting there. They're getting there. That's what I mean. They're getting better. The line, you know, the blocking backs, and then Kyrie, you know, he's really blossoming, you know, just like Vegas Ferguson and Jerome Evans did on our team. There's another similarity. And, you know, the quarterback play is important, and if they can keep getting better as well, and I don't mind the 2 quarterbacks, they definitely require the opponent to prepare for more than one offense, and that's, you know, we only have a week to do it, that also, it's more difficult for the opponent.
So our opponent, of course, the Naval Academy, runs a unique offense, less time to prepare, as you're talking about. Now, after Notre Dame, you've spent a career throughout athletics, professional and collegiate athletics, including a stop at the Naval Academy. And you were there back in the 90s for a pretty special game.
Yeah. We spent 5 years there. I was the number 2 guy in athletics at the Naval Academy. Great place, great people, you know, great purpose, just like Notre Dame. But yeah, so the special event that Mike's talking about is I had the good fortune, I was the business manager there, and the first Notre Dame Navy game in Ireland was while I was on Navy's administration, and I was the business manager, so I was on the advanced team along with some of the Notre Dame guys to go prep for that game. That was really fun, first being in Ireland, and then working with Notre Dame, my brothers, you know, even though I was with Navy. That was a lot of fun, and it's so glad to see them continue that with the announcement today. And I think it'll be another special game. I hope I get a chance to go.
So, Steve, you've been with the Dallas Cowboys. You've been an athletic director at SMU, Central Florida, been all around college athletics. I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of the industry, the business of college athletics, particularly name, image, and likeness. If you were an athletic director today, how would you approach that issue?
Yeah, I always like to say I'm not an attorney, so I believe everyone should have their rights to do what they want to do within the legal parameters. And it sounds like, you know, I have a hard time saying when someone can't, you know, profit from their likeness, you know. But I also, as I said to you before, the greatest transformative experience I had in my life was being a student athlete at Notre Dame. And that student athlete model, I worry about us retaining that, gaining, you know, I want this next generation to have the experience I had, because that meant the world to me, and I'm worried now, you know, between that, the transferring, you know, if we had transferring the way we did then, I know Joe Montana wouldn't have lasted after his freshman year. We were both eighth string our freshman year. I mean, I don't know if I would have either, but I'm glad I wasn't tempted not to, because I wouldn't have been able to say what I just said. It's the most transformative experience I ever had. You know, I owe everything what I am today, what my family has today, to Notre Dame. It's that simple. That and my parents. And now I worry about that. I worry about that student-athlete model in college athletics today. I don't know what the answer is, but again, I'm not an attorney. I would say, all right, so this is who we are. You know, we're going to promise you this, you know, free education, great institution, What value is that? I look back on it, what value is that to me, that experience? There's no dollar amount to put on that. I'm from Hummelstown, right, Jeff? Right? But, what value is that to the life that you're hearing that I lived? I feel really, really lucky, and there is no dollar value to that. So a few $1,000s when you're 18 years old, I mean, gosh, but again, if that's their rights, I don't want to deny anyone their rights either. So tough deal.
It is. The pace of change in college athletics is astounding, certainly. Steve, thank you so much for sharing some of those memories. At this point, I'm sure there are members of the audience that have some questions. Would love to hear anybody from the audience with a question.
Thanks, Steve. What's your thoughts on the current state of the playoffs, and do you think that it should be expanded to include 8, 12 teams?
Right. You heard me say it. It's not a playoff. It's an invitation, right? I truly think if any team goes undefeated, you play until you lose. So, yes, expansion is needed because why is it an invitation? Because they only are letting the money, but expansion, we're now, and I love the bowls, so I want it all done. My dream would be they have it all done within the bowl system we know today, because those communities had supported those bowls over these years and years, and I feel they deserve to get the windfall of having a playoff game where the winner, it matters. And it goes on. Now there's also the student-athlete welfare part. If you have 12 and you do the math, I think if you win it all, that's 4 more games after your regular season. These are students, and that's a little bit of a rub. I'd like to see, I'll be honest with you, I'd like to see the conferences be formed so that they're more equal, and that's the winner of the conferences are then advancing into the playoffs to play the other winners of the conferences. That's not rocket science. That happens in every other sport league in America, pro and college, right? So this isn't a new idea, but for some reason, we aren't able to get there in college athletics. And I was an AD. I stopped in 2012. We talked about stuff like that back then, just like we talked about the NLI and what are we going to do, especially when the salaries of coaches and the revenue of the TV rights got so high. We talked about how we're going to address this. And here's an ironic thing. We didn't want politics to dictate what we have to do. But guess what just happened, right? Each state's politicians decide what the rules are. And I worry about that. I'll just say that. But back to your question on playoffs, I believe the more that qualify, the better. It's at least 8, but where you have every conference champion, and yet there are, the question is, well, if the SEC has 2 really powerful teams, why leave one out? Well, okay, that's why maybe 8, group of 5 team for sure. Anyone that's undefeated needs to be in there at the Division I level, the FBS level. Anyone that, because it's a playoff. You play until you lose. That's my opinion.
Okay, other questions? Okay, I have one last question for Steve, and this is going to be really hard, so get ready. So, of course, you were with the Dallas Cowboys. Now you're back with the University of Notre Dame. Which one is really America's team?
There you go. Notre Dame.
Yeah,
That's
there
easy.
we go. All right. Well, let's give a big round of applause to Steve Orsini.
Yes. Thank you.